Hey everyone.
Hey everyone.
Welcome to another Travel Therapy Mentor video. Tonight we're going to be talking about packing and moving as a travel therapist. We get a lot of questions about what you should bring on your assignment, how do you get to assignments, everything with the packing and moving process we get questions about pretty often. We talked about this several years ago, but recently we've got more and more questions. There's a lot of new travelers getting into travel therapy right now, starting their first assignments. So it's good to recover some of these topics and give some updated perspective because our thoughts are always changing about these various topics. So Whitney's going to introduce us and I'm going to give this video shared in a few different groups.
Hey everyone, thanks for joining us. For those that may be new to our page, we are Whitney and Jared Kazaza, and we're both traveling physical therapists. We've been travel PTs since 2015, so we're coming up on, it's been over 8 years now, 8.5 years of being travel therapists. And as Jared mentioned, we've talked about this topic in the past, but it's been a couple years. I think it was 2019 was the last time we did a video about packing and moving. So definitely time to bring this topic back around, especially for those of you that may be newer to travel therapy and trying to figure out what to pack and how to pack for travel therapy assignments. So we typically try to bring you guys education and information about all kinds of different travel therapy topics. We do these videos every couple weeks or so. We also upload our videos to podcast and YouTube formats. So for those of you that prefer to listen on our podcast or on YouTube, shout out to you guys as well that we'll watch later. For those that are tuning in with us live, we would love if you would just say hello in the comments. I see that a few people are already on live. Hey Yosef. Yosef is tuning in from St. Louis. Hey Justin. How are you guys? Thanks for giving a shout out there, Yosef. So we just have a couple announcements and reminders here before we get started on tonight's topic. It's hard to believe it's already December. We're coming up on the end of the year here. I feel like this year has really flown by. So we just have a few weeks left in 2023. For those of you that are on our email list, we are going to be sending out an end of year kind of checklist for you, some things that you should be thinking about as the end of the year approaches. If you're not on our email list and you want to get that checklist, just shoot us a message and we can get you added to that email list so you can get your checklist and make sure you're dotting your I's and crossing your T's as a travel therapist as the year comes to a close. We are going to be doing our end of year giveaways. If you're not familiar, every year, the last couple of years, we've given away several $200 gift cards to different therapists that took contracts with our recommended recruiters. So if you are someone who's listening and you have taken a contract this year with one of the recruiters that we sent you and recommended to you, make sure to fill out that form because you're already eligible. You just have to send us the form so we can get your entry in. We're also going to do a giveaway for someone that leaves us a review. So if you would like to leave us a review on Facebook or on Apple Podcasts, just leave us that review, send us a message with a screenshot of it, and we'll get you entered to win a $100 gift card for that. And then the last thing is, with the end of the year approaching, we know there's a lot of you out there that are thinking about starting travel therapy in the new year. If you are thinking about getting started as a traveler in the beginning of 2024, we'd love to help you get started. Please feel free to send us a message. If you need help getting connected with great recruiters who can help you with your job search, you can also fill out our recruiter recommendation form online. So we'd love to help you get started.
Yep.
Hey Owen, thanks for joining.
Yeah, so in terms of packing and moving, the first thing you have to think about is what type of move are you going to be doing? And you know, this obviously depends on where your assignment's going to be and where you're driving from or where you're moving from. For example, if you're, say, taking an assignment in Hawaii, obviously that's going to be very different if you're going from the East Coast to Hawaii than if you're going from the East Coast to the Midwest. That's going to be a very different move. So the first thing to think about is where's your assignment going to be and what type of move are you going to be doing? Are you going to be flying there? Are you going to be driving there? 95% of cases, you're going to be driving to the assignment. But there are some situations where you might fly, mostly Alaska, Hawaii, maybe the Virgin Islands. There are sometimes travel contracts in like Guam and things like that where you're going to be flying. But 95% of the time you're going to be driving. Yeah,
it's more rare for travel therapists to fly to assignments. Now, there are some people, if they feel like they don't have a reliable car or they don't want to put all the miles on their car, there are some people that will think about shipping their car and flying to their assignment, or flying to their assignment and renting a car in the area. Renting a car can really add up. If it's not something you absolutely have to do, it's usually not the best choice. So as Jared mentioned, most travel therapists, if you're going to be taking a job in the continental U.S. and the lower 48, you're most often going to take your own car. If you do choose to ship your car, that does give you some options to pack some stuff in your car and have it shipped across the U.S. for you, and then you can bring whatever you need to bring on the plane. But do keep in mind there's some risk there if you ship your stuff. It could get lost or stolen, so that it's a little more tricky. In addition to that, some people will choose to mail some things ahead, but again, you're kind of risking what's going to happen in the process of it being mailed. So I would say by and large, most travel therapists, you're going to be packing up everything that you need to bring with you in your vehicle and driving to your new assignment.
Yeah, and we got a lot of questions last year when we took an assignment in Alaska about why we chose to drive there. And like Whitney said, a lot of that has to do with rental car prices. It also has to do with how you get all of your stuff to the new location. So for example, for us, for Alaska, there's multiple reasons why we did it. One, we wanted to do the road trip anyway. I'd heard a lot of good things about the Alcan. We really wanted to drive through Canada. And it was an amazing road trip. It was probably our favorite road trip we've done in the United States, or I guess within driving distance, Canada and everything. So that was one reason. The second reason was we looked into rental car prices, and especially for two of us, but I mean, even if we tried to make it work with one car, which if we were going to rent a car, we probably would try to make it work that way. It was going to be like $2,000 a month or more. And, multiply that by 3 months, and it ends up being really expensive in terms of that or driving. And then also you have to add into that the cost of a flight for both of us. And then we'd have to take more than a couple bags. So you probably have additional baggage costs that way. And it just makes a lot more sense to drive if it's if it's feasible to do that. And of course, it depends on your situation, because, a 2-week road trip or a 10-day road trip is not feasible for everyone depending on your situation. And also the time of year could make a difference. But so renting a car is very expensive. It's hard to get your stuff there if you don't drive. For us, we had our whole van loaded up with stuff that we were taking to Alaska. So trying to think about getting all of that stuff to Alaska any other way would have been really difficult.
Yeah, now when we did take a travel assignment in Hawaii, this was the only time we ever flew to an assignment. And obviously, if you're going to Hawaii, that's pretty much your only option is to fly there, right? You're not going to be able to take a car. Unless you were planning on staying there for a whole year, you could maybe ship your car, but it would be a lot. So we had to really pack light, two bags each, basically, a checked bag and a carry-on. We may have checked one extra bag, it's possible, but definitely had to really pack light. Luckily, that was later in our travel career because we'd already learned a lot about being more minimalist and packing light. I would say in the beginning of your travel career, you're probably going to bring too much. You're going to have to learn how to downsize and how to be more minimalistic. You're going to go on your first assignment and you're going to pack way too much, and you're going to realize you didn't use a lot of it and that you can do better the next time. But it's part of the learning process. Over the years, not only have we had a lot of experience with packing and moving to travel therapy jobs, but we've also traveled quite a bit internationally, and we've learned to be very minimalistic when it comes to traveling internationally. We actually only carry or travel with carry-ons. We never check a bag when we travel internationally, and if any of you guys have followed us for any length of time, you probably know that we take multiple month trips abroad. So we've traveled as long as 5 months abroad, only with carry-ons.
Yeah, that's not really feasible for travel assignments, though, because you need work clothes. There's a lot more things you need to bring to a travel job than you would on one of our international trips. But it just goes to show that you can pack a lot more light than most people think. A lot of people are thinking you're moving furniture and you're bringing all of your stuff and kitchen things and pots and pans, and usually that's not going to be the case.
Yeah. Just want to give a shout out to some of those that are tuning in. Hey, Sarah. Hi, Annie. Hi, Kathleen.
Did you say Lake Atitlan?
Yeah, Annie, our friend from Lake Atitlan. Good to hear from you. If anybody is tuning in, if any current travel therapists are tuning in, for example, like Sarah is a traveler, I know Owen. If you have any suggestions on what you've done in the past, please feel free to leave a comment. We got a lot of feedback this past week on our social media from different folks about different strategies that they used. If you're someone who's new to travel therapy and you have a question, feel free to drop that in the comments. Let us know what you're thinking about. Let us know if you're getting ready to take your first travel assignment, and if you have questions about packing, we'd love to hear from you.
One other thing to add, when you mentioned our Hawaii assignment, same thing with rental cars there. It was very expensive. We actually got really lucky because we looked into renting a car before we did some more research, and a car on Turo or Hertz or somewhere like that was going to be $1,300 or $1,400 a month. versus even, I mean, it's close to as expensive as Alaska. Alaska, I think, was a little bit more, but Hawaii is very expensive to rent a car as well. We ended up getting one for $600 a month, which we were very fortunate. We got very lucky there. But in a lot of cases, you're going to be paying $1,400, $1,500, $1,600 a month to rent a car. So it's something you really need to think about. And there's situations too, say you're taking a Hawaii contract where you're going to fly there. If you're going to be there 6 months or 9 months, then you might think about buying a car. Some people do that in that situation. Or if you're flying to Alaska, say you don't want to drive up there, you might actually be better off buying a car and then reselling it versus renting for 6 or 9 months because the cost is so high. So that's something else to consider. Some people will do that, especially in Hawaii. Fly there, get an island car for 6 months, and then sell it before you leave.
Yeah. We have a lot of content about specifically our assignment in Hawaii and our assignment in Alaska because those are two very unique places. So if that is something you're interested in, if you're taking a contract in one of those two places, we have both articles and videos that we've done on those specific locations. I would recommend that you go back and look on our website to find those, or send us a message and we can link to it for you.
So the next thing you need to think about after you know where your assignment is, most cases you're going to be driving there, is to think about how long you're going to be at that assignment or in the area. Are you going to just go there, come straight back home? Do you have plans after 3 months that you're coming back home for? Or is this something where maybe you're going from the East Coast to the West Coast and you're planning to stay there for 6 or 9 months? Maybe you're taking multiple assignments on that side of the country, or maybe you're planning on extending a contract. Maybe you're starting with a long contract in the first place. That's going to impact what all you need to bring and what you need to plan for. So another thing that you really need to think about before you start to pack or think about what you're going to pack is, what are your plans for this? Is it going to be across the country? If it is, how long are you staying over there? Are you coming back home? Are you going to fly back home to visit? Or are you going to drive all the way back home? Those kind of things are really important to think about before you start packing.
Yeah, this is really important because sometimes you're only going to set off for just one assignment and then you're going to have an opportunity to come back home before the next one. But if not, because quite a lot of travelers just are like, I'm going to bring everything with me that I need for the whole next year because I'm going to take back-to-back assignments before returning home in 6, 9, 12 months. So that's something you really need to consider in terms of everything that you're going to need to bring. It also kind of depends on your home situation. Do you have a place at home where you're leaving things behind and storing things? Is it more of a storage unit? Do you have family at home that could, say, send you something if you forgot it? So these are all things to take into consideration as you're thinking about planning, packing, moving. We have talked to travelers who kind of had like different seasons of clothes where they're like, I'm only going to bring my warm weather clothes for this 6 months, and then I'm going to go back home and switch it out for this box of clothes for the next thing. We also know travelers that just have everything with them at all times for all options. So you just need to do some advanced planning and know what your setup is going to be in that situation.
So once you have that figured out, you know how long you're going to be there. One thing you really need to start thinking about here, especially if you're going to be on the other side of the country for multiple assignments, is what is the climate going to be like? Because that's really going to impact what you bring. If you're moving from California to New England and you're going in May and you're planning to stay there for 6 months, well, now you're going to have to pack warm and cold clothes. You have to think about those kinds of things versus if you're going from New England to California, maybe you only need warm clothes if you're going to be there 6 months. It might not be as big of a deal to pack really warm or, multiple different seasons of things. So think about the climate of where you're going. Is it going to be really rainy? Is there going to be snow? Those types of things can really influence what you need to pack for your assignment.
You also want to think about your hobbies and the types of activities that you're going to be doing in the area. If you are planning on taking a winter assignment in Colorado and you know that you're going to be skiing or snowboarding, well, now you're going to have to bring a lot more gear for your hobbies. And how are you planning to pack that and keep that with you? Are you someone who's very outdoorsy? Maybe you have a mountain bike or something like that. Is that something you're going to need to bring? Or are your hobbies something that don't really involve a lot of equipment? Maybe you just like to read and do some, easy kind of hikes on the weekends, and you just need a pair of sneakers and a couple books. Like maybe your hobbies might look quite different, but for those of you that are more outdoorsy, that have a lot more hobbies that require equipment, you'll need to take into account like how you're going to bring all that equipment, or are you going to bring all that equipment, or are you just going to rent it or buy it there?
Yep. Another important thing to think about is the dress code at your assignment. Is it one where you're going to be wearing khaki and polo, business casual attire, or are you going to be wearing scrubs? And if you're going to be wearing business casual, you might be able to get by bringing less things because you can kind of use some of those same clothes for weekends and things like that. Whereas if it's scrubs, okay, well now you have to bring scrubs and clothes for the weekend and gym clothes and more things there. So what is the dress code going to be like at your assignment? You need to know that before you leave so that you can kind of plan a little bit around that.
Yeah, and kind of the same goes here for, are you going to be gone for multiple assignments? Because now it's like, say you have a stack of scrubs, but you also have some business casual clothes. Do you have to bring all of it because you might need one thing for one assignment and one thing for another? Or is this going to be something, again, where you switch out the clothes later, or you buy some when you get there? Maybe you don't worry about scrubs because you don't as often work in an inpatient setting. Maybe you just wait and see if you're going to need scrubs and buy them once you get to that second or third assignment. And also you have to consider like what color is that facility going to use. So you may not want to bring all the scrubs that you own because it may not be necessary until later, until you know for sure which color you're going to need. So definitely a lot to take into consideration there.
Now, after clothes, something else to think about is what type of housing are you going to have at this assignment? If it's going to be furnished or unfurnished, that makes a massive difference. If it's a furnished place, a lot of times they're going to have things like pots and pans and plates and silverware and all of that already for you, obviously furniture. Whereas if it's an unfurnished place, there is a lot of things that go into furnishing a place. Even if it's just short term and even if it's as minimal as possible, there's a lot more things than you would think that you would need to either bring or buy when you get there. And in a lot of cases, if it is an unfurnished place, then you can be better off going to like a Goodwill or something like that when you get there and getting some of those kitchen things, pots, pans, plates, that you can use, and then maybe just donate those back instead of having to deal with packing and taking those with you. That, of course, depends on the situation. Probably the vast majority of the time, travelers are renting furnished places, so you won't have to deal with that. But if you do, we definitely know a lot of people that have even taken furniture with them in like a trailer. And we also know people that have rented furniture at a travel assignment. So there's so many different things you can do there. If you have a trailer, you have furniture that you want to bring, then that can make sense. But, a lot of times that's a lot of hassle and a lot of extra work. And some people just prefer just rent some furniture while you're there and then be done with that when you leave.
Yeah, I would say the vast majority of travel therapists choose to rent furnished places. So under most circumstances, you're not going to be bringing furniture with you. We have heard of people bringing something like a blow-up mattress. I've even seen a blow-up couch before. Or something small, like a beanbag chair or foldable camping chairs. We've seen people get really creative. They pack their stuff in their car with bins and then they just use the bins as end tables, or they get the type of drawer plastic bins and they put all their clothes in those and then they use that as a dresser when they get there. So you'll find different things in different ways that work for you, but I would say the majority of travel therapists are going to rent furnished places where you're not having to bring a lot of furnishings with you. And if you do get there and find that you need something, most people will either rent furniture, find something at Goodwill. Even some people will ask coworkers or look on Facebook Marketplace for things that are really cheap used. You're not gonna, you don't have to live at the most beautifully furnished place. You're only gonna be there for a couple months, so you can use hand-me-down kind of stuff. And then donate it back when you leave. I would say that's what most therapists do.
Yeah, we have talked to some travelers that think that they're going to save a lot of money by getting unfurnished places. In a lot of cases, of course, you can save money that way, but when you add in the extra hassle and the extra time commitment and the cost of like either finding or moving furniture and all that, a lot of times you really don't come out that much ahead. Furnished places are just extremely convenient compared to having to get, because you have to think about things like you have to get electricity turned on and water turned on and how are you going to get Wi-Fi. So a lot of cases, even if you're saving $500 or $600 a month, you probably just want to go with a furnished place and not have to deal with all that hassle. So that's important to think about. Is an unfurnished place, is that what you're planning on doing, or are you probably just going to pay a little bit more money and find furnished places on each assignment?
Yeah. So a common theme that we just can't reiterate enough for travel therapists is minimalism. I think before you become a traveler, you may be somebody like I was who really overpacks and feels like you need so many things.
Was?
I'm a lot better now, you have to admit,
yeah.
Than I used to be. And so, when you look at travel therapy, you have to realize like you don't need to bring every single thing that you own. You're probably not going to use most of it. You really have to be strategic in planning out what you're going to bring because it has to most of the time fit in your car. So especially for us females, I would say that clothing is a big place where you probably think that you need more than you actually need. Clothes and shoes. You don't need to bring every pair of shoes that you own. You don't need to bring all your clothes from your closet. Really consider that, especially most often you're going to be working 5 days a week. So most often you're going to be wearing your work clothes the majority of the week. And then besides that, you just need a couple outfits that you can interchange on the weekends, some workout or athletic clothes that you can interchange. One thing I really had to get over when it came to packing for travel assignments was worrying about wearing the same outfit over again. What I've realized over the years is no one is going to notice that you wore the same outfit. So you could literally have 5 pairs of work clothing and wear the same thing every week. And probably no one's going to notice. You definitely want to make sure that all your clothes are interchangeable, especially if it's like a business casual. That way you can switch it up a little bit with tops and bottoms. And same thing for your weekend clothes. Kind of have a wardrobe that's interchangeable so you don't have to bring quite so many items. As far as packing shoes, I would recommend trying to pick just one pair of each type of shoes. So, one pair of hiking boots, one pair of sneakers, one pair of sandals, one pair of more dressy shoes. You don't need to have 5 different varieties of each type of shoe.
For sure.
So those are some things to think about when it comes to wardrobe. I promise you wear less than you think. You'll probably bring a bunch of stuff with you and then realize 13 weeks is over and you didn't wear half of it.
We've harped on this a lot. If you've taken our course, you've seen the videos talking about packing as little as possible. We've talked about it in prior videos. But it's true, like we packed almost all of our stuff and brought it. We thought we'd need everything. We were like, oh, well, maybe we'll need it. We'll bring it. And actually we had a camper at the time, so it wasn't that hard to bring a lot of things. But as we traveled more and more, we pretty much every single contract we brought less things. And like Whitney said, I realized why do I need to bring more than 5 polo shirts if I'm going to be working in a business casual environment? I can wear the same shirts every week, wash them, and have no problems there. So you really can get by with a lot less than you think you can, and it really saves you a lot of hassle if you do bring less things.
No. Now, when it comes to homeware and supplies, like things that you're going to need at your apartment, it's really good to find out from the landlord, from wherever you're going to be renting, what's already there. So that way you're not bringing a bunch of duplicates of things. Like hopefully you don't need to bring a broom and a mop and a vacuum cleaner and all those things. Hopefully all that stuff's already going to be there. But there are certain things that some people really just can't live without. Some people really, can't live without their Instant Pot or their air fryer. So definitely if those things are important to you, bring them. Find a way to bring them and fit them into the car. But you don't necessarily have to bring everything as far as what's at the house already, especially things like dishes and stuff like that. They're probably going to have that, or you can pick it up really cheap at Walmart or Goodwill. So you don't need to bring an entire bin of dishes with you, unless you just have, a favorite coffee mug or that sort of thing. But definitely try to find out as much as possible what's there and think about things that you can get once you're already there. Another thing that kind of goes along this line is like paper towels, toilet paper, just different supplies, trash bags. You don't need to bring that with you from place to place. You can easily get it at the Walmart or the Target or wherever once you get there.
Yep. Something we did bring with us that I would say you might want to think about is anything that you really like to use for cooking. So for a lot of people, that'll be things like an air fryer.
I just said that.
Oh, okay. Or an Instant Pot. And we definitely always brought an Instant Pot, and that really helped us with just saving time with cooking. So, even though that was a hassle to bring, it still made sense. So there are some things that I would say it can be better to just go and get those things, bring them with you, instead of suffering for a few months and not having them.
Yeah, that's honestly, those are 2 things that we hear from so many people, air fryer and or Instant Pot, like must have, must bring kind of things. But yeah, hopefully you don't need to bring a toaster and a coffee maker and a blender. Hopefully they're going to have those kinds of things, unless you just have like your absolute favorite espresso maker that you must have. But just, kind of prioritize what's really important to you.
Yeah, so in terms of organizing things and how you bring them, something that has really helped us is using vacuum bags, or like the Space Saver bags. And I remember when we first started using those, I thought it wasn't going to be a big deal, that it really wouldn't save them much space, but they really do work pretty well. And we found this out in our camper because we would vacuum seal our clothes, like our winter clothes, and put them underneath our bed. We had a storage compartment under there, and it takes up probably 3 times less space than it would if you didn't do that. So that's a good way to shrink everything down and fit more in a limited space. So say you're traveling in a car that's maybe a hatchback or a smaller sedan. every space that you can have matters in that situation. So you might want to use vacuum bags to make your clothes a little smaller than they would be otherwise. You can also think about things like storage cubes or packing cubes. Whitney really likes those a lot. She can fit more in a suitcase or more in a smaller space using the packing cubes than she could otherwise.
It also makes you stay more organized, so that way you kind of know where everything is. You have like your storage cube for this type of clothing or this type of clothing. And it really, again, if you want to organize by season, that's really helpful. I actually forgot that until you mentioned it. That was one way when we had the RV that we were able to keep all of our seasons of clothes with us, is we would just switch them out. We would put like the winter stuff in the space bags and put them in the storage area under the bed, and then I would switch them out when the season came that we needed to switch it. So if you're somebody who wants to be able to travel with all your stuff year round, that can really save you a lot of space. Something else I think is really underrated that I never knew back before we started traveling. I used to see, some people would roll their clothes or pack it a certain way. I never knew how much space that really saved until I started trying it myself. The way that you've always been taught to just fold the clothes and put them on top of each other, it really wastes a lot of space because not all clothes are the same size. So if you put a stack of things, but they're kind of jagged and they don't all fit evenly on top of each other, you waste a lot of space. Whereas if you roll them, you can fit things in the corners a lot better. Another one that I heard recently mentioned that I've never tried is called flat packing, where you lay all the items flat instead of folding them, and apparently that can save some space too.
Yeah, the rolling clothes, that makes a huge difference. We figured that out on our international trips where we, on a carry-on, we have very limited space, and we noticed we're able to put a lot more rolling our clothes than if we just fold them normally. So you wouldn't think that really makes that big of a difference, but it can, especially if you're very limited in space. Another thing is storage bins. So a lot of travelers have tons of storage bins that they have like a space for everything, and those are great, like Whitney said, for a variety of reasons. One, sometimes if you don't have like an end table or something like that, or a TV console, you can use the storage bin as that sort of thing, that piece of furniture. Another thing is they're easily stackable, so that can really make a lot of difference when you're stacking things in your car, or when you get to your assignment location, maybe you have limited storage space, you can just stack them all the way up to the ceiling, and there's no issue there. So storage bins or plastic totes can really make a difference. And even though they cost a little bit of money, I think they're much better than boxes. They don't smash so easily, so it's probably worth investing in a few storage bins at least that you can use to pack all your stuff in and have a place for everything when you take it.
Yeah, something else to think about is suitcases. A lot of people will be inclined to pack all their stuff in suitcases. Suitcases aren't a bad idea, especially when you're on assignment. You might want to have 1 or 2 suitcases with you, so that way if you take a weekend trip, you can pack, or if you need to fly somewhere while you're on assignment, you'll have a suitcase to bring with you. But I wouldn't think about packing all of your stuff in suitcases, because you kind of run into that same issue where I was talking about with folding the clothes. If you stack a bunch of suitcases in your car, you run out of room very fast because of the wheels and things. They don't fit in your car and optimize the space. So maybe 1 or 2 suitcases on the bottom, and then use bins and packing cubes and soft-sided things that can kind of shove in different places. It's really like playing Jenga or kind of like Tetris. When you're packing your car for a travel therapy assignment, you want to use every available space possible.
Yeah, and of course that depends on what type of car you have. If you have a big SUV, maybe this doesn't apply as much. You can waste some space. But if you have a small sedan or a coupe, you're really gonna have to. Oh, look at that.
Oh, I forgot. That must be some new feature. Jared put his thumb up and it did a thumbs up on the screen.
Yeah. So anyway, if you have limited space, then these things can really make a difference. If you don't have limited space, it might not be as big of a deal.
Yeah. And another thing, back before we used to have all the fancy little like storage bags and packing cubes and stuff, sometimes I would just throw stuff in trash bags, so it was soft and it would fit in small crevices and things. So especially
like towels and blankets and things, that's an easy way, and they take up a lot of space. So just put it in a trash bag and stuff it in there.
Yep. And then you can shove it in a corner. So we're going to go through a few more strategies here, a few more points. If you are watching live, though, we'd love to hear from you. If you just want to say hi in the comments, let us know if you have any questions. We will answer your questions at the end. If you have any feedback or suggestions for other travelers, things that you found that have worked well for you, feel free to leave those in the comments as well. Also, if you got any value out of this video, if you learned anything, we'd love if you would hit that thumbs up button and just let us know.
I saw Ryan was asking about MedBridge codes. We actually got an updated MedBridge code, Ryan. It's TTM now. So you don't have to type in Fifth Wheel PT, it's just TTM.
Yeah, and side note, regarding what I said earlier about like the end of year to-do list, a big piece of my end of year to-do list was to get all of my CEUs done. I did not have any due this year for my physical therapy license, but I did have them due for my athletic training license, and I'm happy to say that right before this video tonight, I finished all of my CEUs. It's kind of early for me. It's only December the 4th. Not December the 31st, so I'm happy to say I did finish all of my CEUs thanks to MedBridge.
Whitney's been watching CEU videos at the gym like crazy. It's kind of weird.
Yeah, so I'm glad to finally be done with that. So if you're in the same boat as me and you also need to finish your end of year CEUs, if you do need CEUs, you can use our MedBridge code to get this. All right, so just to wrap up here, as we mentioned, packing your car for travel therapy assignments can really be like a game of Tetris, just trying to use every available space. Unfortunately, sometimes you will find that maybe you just don't quite have enough room for everything. So we do know some travelers who will use those car toppers, either the soft-sided ones or the hard-sided ones that go on top of your car. We've also seen versions where you have like a hitch with a rack where you could put extra bins or things kind of along the lines of like a bike rack, but it can be a storage bin. These can definitely be good options to bring additional things with you. But we do want to warn you that sometimes having these things can set you up for theft.
Yeah, we know a few travelers now that have had, like say you're doing a cross-country road trip, you have one of those storage things on top of your car and you stop somewhere for the night. And you know, a lot of times when you're stopping for the night, you don't really know if an area is good or bad. You don't know anything about it. You're just stopping to sleep. We know a few people that have had that stolen off of their car completely or broken open and all of their stuff taken. So if you do get something like that, and even if you don't have something like on top of your car, behind your car or whatever, be mindful of where you park and spend the night if it's a multi-day road trip, because if there's a bunch of stuff in your car, it just makes it a much bigger target for people to break in. They know that, you know, the odds of finding something good in your car where you have the whole back seat full is much higher than a car that might be empty. So be careful with that. That would be a nightmare to be halfway across the country and have all of your stuff stolen. So try to choose places that are well lit, obviously. Try to look at reviews, make sure it seems safe before you stop and spend the night somewhere.
Yeah, gosh, we've had several friends that this has happened to. One of our friends, they stole the whole topper off the top. Another one of our friends, he was moving between assignments and stopped at the Travelers Conference on the way, had a TV and all kinds of things in his car. Somebody broke the window, took his TV, took his suitcase with his clothes and everything in it. So just really be mindful of that when you're moving, even though it can be a big pain. Maybe try to stay more with a friend in a neighborhood where it's safer, or take some stuff in with you, especially valuables. If you're going to be staying overnight, that can definitely be a hassle as far as moving.
We actually know some people too that when they're doing a cross-country road trip like that, they will take all of their things inside to the hotel room just to avoid anybody breaking into their car or losing their stuff, which is a major hassle. But you know, if you really want to be cautious, that's a way to do it as well. You can take all of your things into the hotel or motel that you're staying for the night.
Yeah. Also keep in mind, you know, it used to be the old adage of like out of sight, out of mind. If you could cover up things, like with one of those things in the back where it pulls over, or lay a blanket over things, that would maybe make you less of a target. But sadly, there's a lot of people out there, a lot of thieves that have those scanners now where they can tell if there's electronics in the car, especially. So we've known other people that had like a laptop, things like that, stolen out of a car because they were able to scan it even though they couldn't see it through the window. So absolutely always take in any electronics. Don't leave a laptop or things like that in the car.
Yep. One other thing I guess to mention is if you are a traveler that's going to travel in an RV, then the considerations are going to be very different, obviously. Like I said, when we started traveling, we basically brought all of our stuff with us because we were traveling in an RV and we had a lot more space. So you don't have to be as mindful of what all you're taking in an RV, but I would still recommend that you don't bring way too much stuff, because what happened with us is we brought all our stuff and we ended up wearing like 1/3 of the things that we brought. And a lot of it would just basically sat in the RV and was just additional weight when you're pulling the camper we lived in it for 3 years. So you think about hundreds of pounds of extra weight that you're pulling for years at a time, you know, that's a drag on fuel efficiency and things like that. So try not to bring too much stuff that you're not going to need, but if there's things that you might use that you wouldn't take on a normal travel assignment, but you have the room in an RV, then maybe you'd bring those things.
Another consideration, we have talked to some travelers that chose to travel with a small trailer, a pull-behind trailer, or bring a small U-Haul trailer if they really had more belongings that they wanted to bring. A lot of times this was if they had a second person and maybe they even wanted to bring like bikes or a motorcycle or something like that too. Or people that always rented unfurnished places and did bring a little bit of furniture with them. I'd say this is more rare, and it's definitely going to set you up for a little bit more hassle with parking, driving, maneuvering a trailer with you, like a U-Haul type trailer or that sort of thing. But it is a consideration. We have talked to travelers that have done it before, so depends on your personal situation. The last thing I'll say is if you're someone who is traveling as a pair or a couple and you have multiple cars, this can obviously allow a little bit more space for packing. Some people, like when we drove to assignments together, we would always drive 2 cars separately. Some people will tow one car behind the other, but again, if you have a second car, if you have a partner, this is going to make it easier. We've also talked to travelers that had someone, like a family member, come with them and drive some stuff out with them. Or alternatively, they had a family member drive in the same car with them, so they'd have 2 people to switch off with. And now if you do this, this is great for being able to switch off, but it's going to take up that extra seat where you can't put quite as much stuff in there. So just lots of different things that we've heard different travelers do before.
We also know some travelers that travel as a couple that wanted to drive together in one car, which makes sense. I mean, you have like a 2,000 or 3,000 mile road trip. You probably want to be in the same car. And they would load the other car up with their stuff and ship it. And so that's going to be additional cost. Also, like Whitney said, you're taking some risk there. Not only that something happens to the car, but that your stuff could get stolen inside the car, which would be a major hassle. So think about that. There's some situations where it might be worth it to you, but there's a lot of situations where it's probably better to just, do the road trip separately, take your stuff, and not have to worry about shipping it, the cost associated with that.
Yeah. So hopefully this gave you guys some ideas, some tips and tricks on things that you can do to make the packing and moving process easier as a traveler. We'll go through some comments and some questions here. If you have any more comments or questions, we'd love to hear from you. Whether you're watching live or if you're watching later on the Facebook replay, you can still leave us comments. We'll go back and read them. If you're listening later on the podcast or on YouTube, feel free to just shoot us a message. We'd be happy to answer any questions that you have. All right, so let's see here. Hey Steven, how are you? He says, I'm rocking a Subaru Crosstrek rental for a month because my car back in Chicago sprung a vacuum leak or a bad transmission. That's a bummer.
Car issues are terrible as a traveler because, if something happens to your car, either while you're going, worst case scenario, or while you're on assignment and you're trying to get back home, that can be a major hassle. So we've made videos about this in the past, but when we first started traveling, we didn't have much money. And a lot of travelers, and when they start, they don't have much money either. And you're usually driving like an old car. And that was our situation. And Whitney's car had a lot of issues. My car had a lot of issues. And as soon as we could, we bought newer cars, not brand new, but newer cars that had less maintenance issues or less mechanical issues. And we think, even though it's more expensive, that's probably worth the cost because you can get in such a terrible situation if something happens to the car or if you break down along a road trip that having a little newer car, spending a little more money on it can be helpful. Not that new cars also can't have issues, but in general, they usually have less issues.
It's always such a bummer because you are away from your usual support system. So if your car broke down at home, maybe you have a friend or a family member whose car you could borrow, but now, or who may be able to give you a ride or that sort of thing, but now you're having to Uber and you're having to rent cars and things like that. So definitely some challenges there that can happen when you're moving and you're not familiar with the area. So good luck, Steven. I hope you get that worked out soon.
Yeah.
It's a bummer. Hey, Justin. Justin says, if you're traveling as a team, would you recommend trying to make it work with one vehicle while it's your assignment? For example, dropping your partner off at their location if it's close enough, or would you recommend having 2 vehicles?
This really depends. I would say one thing it really depends on is how far away your assignment is. If it's, if you're going 300 or 400 miles to an assignment, then probably just take 2 cars. It's not going to be a big deal. If it's all the way across the country or maybe Alaska, then maybe driving 2 cars doesn't make as much sense because that's a long way, a lot of gas, a lot of extra cost to take 2 cars. Another thing that really will depend there is, are you going way out of your way to take the other person to work? Also, are your start times the same and are your end times the same? Because that can make a big difference. We've had situations where we pretty much only used 1 car when we worked at the same clinic. And you can make that work, especially if you are at the same clinic, but it is a lot more hassle. So I would say in the majority of cases, probably taking 2 cars makes more sense. But if you're really trying to save costs or you have a really long drive to get to the assignment, then you can obviously make it work. It's just going to be a little bit more hassle.
I think it really depends on your discipline and which settings you're going to work in as well. So as you start thinking about traveling as a pair, if you're less picky, like if both of you are open to trying whichever settings are available, and depending on which discipline it is, if there's more job availability, you're going to have a lot more opportunity to get two jobs that are exactly as close as you need them to be, or sometimes even in the same facility. Whereas if you're a little bit more picky, or if you are of a discipline that it's less likely that there's as many jobs, you might be put in a situation where you're having to really settle, and the jobs might be further apart or that sort of thing, where it won't be feasible. However, we have met a lot of couples, at least a couple of couples that we've talked to that have worked in the same place all the time and always had one car. I was surprised to learn this just recently about some of our friends, that I think it was Haley and TR. They're a PT-OT team, and they said that every single assignment, they've always been in the same building. And I'm like, wow, how did you guys make that work? Like, that's pretty amazing. And so they've always been able to drive together. However, with Jared and I, we've hardly, maybe about 50-50 have we worked like in the same building or close enough together that we could have commuted together. There's been quite often where we were further apart or had different schedules, and we couldn't make that work.
We're on the opposite side. So like maybe we were living in the middle and Whitney had to go east and I had to go west. That would have been really difficult for one car. So it really depends on where your assignments are, where you're living, those types of things.
Yeah, so there are some travel pairs that make it work with one car, but I would say the majority of them, such as ourselves, always had two. Let's see, Steven said regarding packing stuff, I think stuff on top of their car. He said, I would ratchet strap them down during the day while driving and just try to keep an eye on it.
Yeah. And
then he said before, I had a two-door coupe Toyota Camry for 2 years traveling. I installed a hitch and rack in the trailer hitch. If it looked like any risk for theft, I'd lug that and the luggage into the hotels. Yep. Yeah. Great idea.
Yeah, for sure. It's better to be safe than sorry in that situation.
Ryan says, what about buying a semi-truck and sleeping in the cab? I mean, it's been done. I'm sure it's been done.
Sure, it's been done.
Yeah, people do some crazy things. Yosef said regarding doing CEUs at the gym, whether or not it showed up on my Spotify Wrapped. No, but if MedBridge did a Wrapped, that would be interesting to see. No, it's just on the MedBridge app. Hey Jonas, hey Mona, hi Liz, hi Jasmine, hey Danica. Yosef said, would one pair of underwear suffice? Probably not.
I think it'll work.
Now, if you did two pairs, then you could be wearing one, wash the other.
Yeah.
Really being minimalistic there.
Yep.
Let's see here. All right, let's see if there's any other questions. Hey, Sarah. Sarah is an experienced travel PT. She says, consolidate your closet into an all year round closet. I don't bring any kitchen appliances with me. I decrease my shoes to what I would be wearing daily or in that season. I don't pack bulky books. On occasion, I'll bring a book. I bring the main items such as clothes, medicine, essentials, toiletries. That's it. I think I head for the season.
Yeah. Yeah, that's good advice. Really try to bring as little as you can. It makes a big difference.
Owen says, another thought for getting stuff there, if you're needing consumables approaching the end of your contract, just don't buy it either until you get there or order on Amazon and ship it to your contract address.
Yeah, for sure.
That's a good idea. Yeah, things like food items or paper towels, those kinds of things. Definitely think about getting toward the end. Now, you don't want to be wasteful. Obviously, if you have some of that stuff from the last assignment and you have a little bit of extra space to pack it and bring it with you, bring it with you. But I wouldn't go out of your way to buy a whole pack of paper towels and travel across the country with it. They'll have paper towels when you get there.
Yep.
All right. Well, if there aren't any other questions, we'll wrap up tonight. Hopefully this was helpful to you guys. Feel free to reach out to us. Also, our friend Morgan, who's a travel occupational therapist, she wrote an article for us, a guest post for our website on this topic, and she gave a lot of her own personal tips and tricks. So feel free to head to traveltherapymentor.com and read her guest post.
Yep. We'll link that in the comments as well.
All right, guys. Well, hope you have a great night and happy rest of the year. We'll probably see you one more time. We'll probably do one more video before the end of the year, one more topic, And then we're going to also do a separate video for our end of the year giveaways. And that'll probably be sometime around December 30th, because this year we are leaving on December 31st to head out of the country on a big trip. So stay tuned for that as well.
Yep. That'll be exciting. 6 weeks, another 6-week trip out of the country. Maybe our last one, we'll see.
Yeah.
All right. Take care, everyone.
Bye.
Bye.